Hello, hello. Great to see everyone, and welcome back to another episode where we throw the spotlight on a leader who has an amazing career and has been doing great things around the world. And today, my very special dear guest is none other than Roger Crellin. Welcome, Roger.
Hey AJ, good to talk. Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you. And we've been talking about doing a podcast together for a little
Yeah.
while now. And we finally got ourselves in the same place at the same time where we could be on the same bat channel. So lovely to have you here. Now, I'm going to just tell you, Roger is someone with a really diverse background. He's also worked in like a crazy number. I think you've lived on 4 continents, but worked in like 30 or 40 countries
Right. Yeah.
around the world, and has a really deep understanding of business, but in particular of leadership as well. And that's what I love about Roger. I've loved the interactions I've had with you through an initiative I'm involved in called Thrive Stars. And I think you're a real giver. I see generosity in your time, in sharing your expertise, and a generosity in even your spirit of how you share feedback and support other people, give resources, ideas, all of those sorts of things. So I knew that you were kind of in the right vein for our guests, because we tend to have leaders who listen, who are really conscious beings who go, I want to do good things by my humans. I want to build a great business, but I want to do it in an ethical way. And quite often that can lead to a bit of burnout or fatigue, overwhelm, those sorts of things. And so I thought, I'm going to bring on Roger because he has so many caps that he's worn over his life, and lots of resources and things in your kit. So tell us quickly, Roger, what's your background? Because it is quite diverse, and I didn't want to try and have a go at mapping it out myself.
Yeah, it is diverse. So thanks, AJ. That was all very kind, too kind. I'm embarrassed. So, I mean, if you start, actually, let's just start now. The work that we're doing together with yourself and your cohort of shareholders on Thrive Stars is actually something I'm really enjoying, because it's taken me out of the cut and thrust of, whether it be software, hardware, or industrial or construction work, and really able to use what I've learned to try and help businesses do better with their people. So for everyone, I'm sure they've heard about Thrive Stars, but watch this space. This year is going to be big. So for me, right from a very, very young age, right from teenage years, I never really wanted to do the same job.
Mm.
I don't know. The psychologists will probably have a field day with that, but anyway. Yeah, so because to me, doing the same job every day, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's different. But for me, I wanted to learn something different every day, something completely different sometimes. So, going from early stages of camera phones in Southeast Asia and Australia, based in Sydney at Fuji, then going to Germany to work in a TV manufacturing business and content business in Cologne. I mean, they're pretty diverse shifts in industry, and a lot of people don't support that, but that's exactly how I wanted to run my life, and I have, and I'm very happy. And there's been a
Wow.
few tears along the way, I'll be honest, but generally it's been fun.
I bet. And so it sounded like when you started out, from what I understand, you kind of immediately were multi-passionate, as in early in your career, you knew that. It wasn't like you were
Yeah.
like, I'm going to follow the traditional path. But I understand you did kind of learn accounting and have a bit of that kind of financial background, didn't you?
Yeah, my dear old dad's the longest serving FCA fellow of the Chartered Institute in Australia, is now
Oh,
retired.
wow.
So he gently steered me, as we do to our children, into accounting. And he was right, actually. I mean, it's a great basis for business, because if you don't know the numbers in any business,
Yeah.
then you're in trouble. Yeah.
You're flying blind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
And so dad steered you there a bit. You've gone all over the place with manufacturing and content and all sorts of things. Was dad your only mentor, or have you had other mentors or coaches or people along the way that you've garnered and gleaned a lot of info from?
Oh yeah, my dad is still a mentor. He's 89. He only just retired off a
Oh,
charity board.
wow.
So yeah, so he's pretty sharp, as is my mum. But I do have two key mentors. Lots of great people I've worked with. You know, I've been very, very fortunate to have worked with some really, really fantastic and equally giving people. But two mentors. One is my former boss from Europe, but he's been my boss twice
Okay.
in my early days in a finance role in a equipment leasing business, and then he asked me to go and work in Europe for him. And we still actually I was only talking to him yesterday. So he splits his time between UK and New Zealand, and I think he taught me to probably the best to digest the conflicts of business,
Mm.
and you know, someone able to sit down and actually help you see through it. So, and then another chap who does leadership work in Australia, who's based on the Central Coast.
Fantastic. And so how has that shaped your career, and what has that meant for you passing it on, I guess, to other people? Because I said before, you're really generous
Yeah.
with your time and your attention. How has that shaped your leadership approach?
At moments when you're under pressure, the little voice of your mentor is in the back of your head, you know, said, and most of the time, just before you open this wonderful device of the mouth, the mentor speaks to you in the back of the head about, you know, where to slow down or where to push ahead.
Mm.
So, you know, that's been good. And as I said, particularly with my boss from Europe, the ability to actually see through the fog calmly.
Mm. And so you seem like a fairly competent guy then, and you've had some good guidance and you've got this variety. And even to be able to see through all of that, you have to, I believe, back yourself and really trust what your intuition's telling you, what the insights and everything that you're getting from data or numbers or whatever. When did you really learn to trust that and to go, actually, I got something worth saying? Because a lot of leaders I coach often say to me, oh, I'm not confident enough to speak up in certain boardrooms, or I feel like I know the answer, and then someone else says it and I think, damn, I wish I had said it. So when did you find that kind of confidence?
Um, I think it built over time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think firstly a role I had in my early years, who is current my boss in those days actually lives in Newcastle. We
Uh-huh.
walk every Thursday, so we still talk every Thursday. And he was not much older than me, but in those days we were representing the hotel industry to state and federal government.
Mm-hmm.
And I always admired his ability to walk into the room bravely
Yes.
and uh, and respectfully, and you know, and to negotiate with respect and to have all of the research. And you know, those early days taught me about having all of the data. And you know, to me, data is not just numbers; it's facts as well. Data is whatever you know. It's the book. To have all of that prepared before you walk into the room, and when you're lobbying state and federal government department leaders and elected members, you've got to have all your facts on the table, because at best you get 20 minutes.
Right.
So that was a fantastic opportunity for me to learn. So, you know, if you can work with somebody like that that teaches you how to prepare for such a high level negotiation,
Mm.
and as we know, negotiation around the world's a hot topic this week or
Yes.
last weekend. You know, to be fully prepared, but not, you know, you can't be over prepared. You have to remain flexible, because
Mm.
things can change on a dime, as we've seen. But to be prepared and to be confident in the face of adversity. Then at that time, I can never forget, I was actually at the Intercontinental Hotel in Sydney with the general manager, and I was trying to sell him a piece of equipment. This is another job. And on the back of his door that led, you know, one of the doorways out of his office, it said on the back of the door, it says, "You are now going on stage."
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
cool.
So, and that was about no matter what your issues might be, you know, he as a general manager of then one of the top hotels in Sydney, you know, when he walks out that door, jacket buttoned up, smile on his face, ready to greet people, ready to converse, ready to face whatever positive or challenging issue might be in that lobby. So, you know, that is almost like you're stepping in, that's it. You're on stage. You know, you need to perform.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you're not ready to perform, then don't go through that door.
Right.
So he said if things are bad or if there's a personal issue in his life, I just don't go out that door until I'm ready to.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
really sage advice. I love that idea of you're now on stage. And I
Yeah.
think I worked during the Sydney Olympics. I worked for
Okay.
the Premier of the state at the
Okay.
time,
Yeah.
who was Bob Carr then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And regardless of what people think of politicians or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
he was definitely a showman. And
Yep.
he always, same thing, even if he was addressing something in Parliament, before he'd answer and respond, he'd stand, he'd button up his jacket, he would take a deep breath, shoulders back, he would think before he spoke.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
think some
regardless of
people,
your political affiliations,
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you have to respect when someone gets that the leader is always on show.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know whether we're born with a presence in a room and maybe I did want to talk about innate versus learned leadership later, but I don't know whether you're born with a presence or whether you get that confidence. For me, it was a building thing over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Similar time to that, I remember being first meeting with Rod McGeoch when he was head of the Olympic organisation. And the first time he walked into the room, because that's when I was with the Australian Hotel Association,
Yeah.
it was like, wow. Like when he walked into the room, there was, a presence. Yeah.
You
But
felt
yeah, for me, it built over time. And I think it came to a culmination when I did take the role in Germany and my boss there. And there, because I was so, what's the word? Definitely the new boy on the block, let's face it. Yeah.
green.
Yeah, green, an Aussie in Germany, large promotion. Yeah. Moving the families like moving the Seventh Fleet, you know. And it just allowed me to take all of those learnings and allowed me the freedom under that boss to actually step up and step out and have the confidence to go into a room that's speaking in a foreign language.
I was going to say, I'm assuming, that German was a second language or maybe not even in your vocab at that point.
Zero.
Zero.
That's not okay. That's zero. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh dear. Right. So huge to fill
Yeah.
into, and how wonderful that a leader saw your potential and allowed you to stretch.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the easiest thing for any CEO or the headhunter or recruiter acting for them is to, do like for like. A
Mm.
German national who's worked in television and media content. But
Yeah.
no, he went for an Aussie with zero Australian school language skills who came from finance leasing. So there you go. So
And
very
so
lucky.
you started to say, can leadership be learned or is it inherent? Are we born
No,
in it? It sounds like you've developed yours over time. Is that how you treat it when you're mentoring, bringing up other people as well? What have you seen ring true in your career?
I think you do have some natural leaders walk towards your desk or into your office, whatever the workspace, or across the floor in the warehouse, because they're not just a graduate, they can be the guy and they can be the new recruit in the warehouse or the new recruit on the road. So you do sense it. It's very hard to describe, but you do sense someone who's just by the way that they hold themselves but not a level of arrogance, so a natural confidence. So I'm a big believer in natural abilities. But then there's a long way to go from that natural confidence or ability to, intellectually to understand things, to then actually being able to apply it for the good of the staff, the customers, and obviously the shareholders. So I think that's the learning bit.
Totally. And I think in our 10-degree shift program that we do with leaders, that's all about the building blocks of leadership. And part of that is actually their own body, the body language that you would needed in another country when you don't speak the language. It's very much about what they eat, how they move, how they breathe, all those sorts of things before we even get into how they manage a team, how they build a tribe, what's their vision. Like, we actually work on that, because I think when you look at a lot of the research, some of the best leaders also have really good personal practices in looking after themselves, and that self-leadership first before I can even begin to lead others. Would you agree, or how's that played out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I won't say I'm the greatest at physical care, my excuse is I've always got an injury from some previous sporting game. But I do try and keep relatively fit. But I think I did like in the 10-degree shift in your program, when you talk about clear purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a lot of it. It's the ability to actually communicate and to have your own purpose, and how that how that's your professional purpose is interdependent on your own personal purposes in life. So, and that's I think that's the trick, is balancing those interdependencies.
Yeah. And I know, for example, in the Thrive Stars initiative that you've been helping us with, you were really quick to go, what's the clear purpose? And can we say it? Can we get it in a few words, and all of those sorts of things? Because you were like, so much of the energy of it hangs on everyone being pointed in the same direction, and in order to move forward, with that laser clarity.
Yeah, and I think that's an issue that's always difficult in a business, and I think that's where a lot of business leaders struggle with execution of their strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Often the strategy may be board directed,
Right. Yes.
and that's okay. May be built bottom up, or it may be a mix or a blend. But ultimately, the shareholders are going to require certain things, and they're going to have their certain objectives that they want met, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
But being able to actually then distill that down into a program plan that the business can cope with, and to communicate that. I'm a big believer that when you're executing that plan, that it has to be in bite-sized chunks. You cannot overwhelm people. You can certainly talk about what the journey is going to be, and then revisit that journey progress in your town halls. But when you're executing it, quite often I've seen the programs of work go out en masse rather than pieces of the jigsaw or of the puzzle that the business can cope with and people can understand. And as long as you keep drawing back why that chunk or that piece of that puzzle, where it fits in the journey, then that's okay. People understand. So, you just don't send it all out at once.
Yeah.
Or just send it out piecemeal without describing the journey. So, I prefer it in the edible pieces, but as long as people know exactly where it fits in the journey, and why, when they go home that night, why 28.2B on the project plan that they achieve, where it actually fits in the company's journey.
In the larger schema. So it is that ability, like you were saying, to zoom up to the high level, to see all of it, to go, here's the whole elephant, but the chunk we're eating right now is this, and what part it is. It sounds like that's coming very much from experience. Has that come about because you've bitten off more than you could chew, or just because what you've seen work?
Probably both, to be honest. I did sometimes have a tendency to take on too much. But also, I think we've all been in company meetings and company strategy away days, and just death by PowerPoint. I know that's a kind of a trite adage that we all use, but it's true. Out comes the 62-page plan on PowerPoint. Everybody goes to the bar, pats one another on the back. Hopefully 9.8 people pat one another on the back, and the 0.2 negative guy's in the corner on his own. You know how the meetings work. And
I do.
then we go away, and then 3 months later, your boss calls you up and goes, "Hey, Rog, how's your section plan going?" I'm like, "Oh, which page?" I fell asleep reading page 2.
Yeah.
And I find that I'm on page 38 where I'm supposed to start. So, it's that lack of unwrapping it and rewrapping it. That's what you've constantly got to do. Got to pull it apart, put it back together, pull it apart, adjust, put it back together, communicate, pull it apart, around and around until you get it complete.
Absolutely. And I think I've seen that a lot in organizations where I'll be like, let's not do a 10-year strategy. Sure, have a big goal, but let's bite off, in quarters or something like that, have a phased approach. And quite often we do overcomplicate things. Absolutely. And we love those offsites, and they're really great for bonding. But at the end of the day, how are you going to communicate it to your people? How will they know where they're standing and where you're up to? So I think you're absolutely right. Knowing how to break something down as a leader and to keep momentum so that people don't lose sight of that. Yeah. The challenge can be sometimes with a board and direction and those sorts of things too, and being a leader that has to almost translate for the frontline staff and those sorts of things. What's been your experience in being a bit of the meat in the sandwich, filtering up and filtering down? How have you navigated that?
It varies depending upon the state of the business, the economy, and the board at the time. Every board is different for good reason. Every board member is different for good reason. Sometimes they're together and sometimes they're not. And it's about trying as best you can to read the room, to, I would say, positively filter to the team. And what does positively filter mean to me? It means make sure that they understand what the board are looking for. Make sure that obviously they have the tools and they understand what's going on. But at the end of the day, without hiding anything, there's also no need for them to be told all about the challenges that may exist within the board or the challenges that may exist in pending government regulations. So there's that balance in keeping them informed and aware, but not, I've seen people actually spook them out by giving them all the negative things. The government's going to do this. It's a balance of honesty and positivity.
Absolutely. And I think that honesty starts at the board. I'm on a board at the moment, and what I really like is the chairman has this way of making sure that even if we have the robust discussion, at the end of the meeting, we're all on agreement of what are we agreeing on, and as a board, what's the decision we've made and how we'll carry that back out to share.
Right. Yeah, good.
And so it's a bit like your executive that had the sign on the back of the door at the hotel.
Someone's at the door, sorry.
So yeah, I'm on a board at the moment, and I love the way the chairman, a bit like the gentleman you were saying from the hotels at the Intercontinental and had the sign on the back of his door. The chairman always says, no matter what robust discussion we've had, no matter what's gone on in the board, we have to thrash things out and question things and ask and give opinions. But at the end of the day, when we make an agreement as a board, we make that as one board. And so he's very clear on what gets communicated outside of the board is this agreed way forward. And so he's very clear on we need to be seen as a unified front. We have to be seen to go back to staff as this is the plan and this is why.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. But they allow you to personalize the message, I assume, no?
Absolutely. Yes. It's not like one liner that you can say, but it's more around we don't air dirty laundry. We don't say this person disagreed with that person. We talk about this is the decision that's been made for the right reasons to move forward with. Yeah. So,
Yeah. And that's been much my experience. Although I did have one in another country where
mm,
the minute after a board meeting, you get one or two phone calls from disgruntled board members wanting to lobby you with a different point of view. And it's like, please, guys, yeah, take it up with the chair.
yeah, or speak up in the meeting, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And so this whole concept then of being a manager and sometimes meat in the sandwich, as well as like you said, you've picked your family up and gone to other countries and all sorts of things, you know, leadership is a privilege, but it can also be a real challenge and a bit of a burden sometimes. And what we look at often in our coaching sessions with so many people these days is a bit of burnout and fatigue and people wanting to do the best, but going, my gosh, it's overwhelming at times. And now we're in a lot of remote working and all of those sorts of things. There's a lot for leaders to juggle. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your own experience? Have you ever had that burnout or complete fatigue before, or how you manage the stress and the, I guess, the overwhelm that comes with lots of responsibility? What's been your path with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think someone would be fibbing if they said they'd never felt any anxiety or burnout or stress where they were, where it was affecting their ability to make good decisions. So, and I think for me, there's this great. I was reading something the other day from a guy named Gary Bernison in the States, who's the managing partner at Korn Ferry, and he calls it putting yourself in neutral. So, and what that means is if it's all getting too much, if there's that much pressure, and the reason he says put yourself in neutral is that you are temporarily giving yourself a bit of stall or a bit of breathing space. Yeah, it can be anything from minutes to hours to days, obviously, but time is precious in business.
Right.
And the reason he uses the term neutral is because you're not going backwards. You just not got your foot flat to the floor just
Right.
at the moment. Yeah.
Got it.
So I
A
think,
little bit of coasting. You're not whacking it in reverse
yeah.
or anything, but let's just
And
coast.
sometimes you've just got to remove I find I've got to remove myself from the scenario. Pretty much, almost put yourself to bed, whether that's physically or mentally.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it's physically.
Yes.
Sometimes physically, you just got to say, actually, I'm going home for the day.
Yeah.
It's rare and very rare, but sometimes it does happen. And I guess that's that changing gears into neutral temporarily, so that then you can let the engine idle, not turn off, but let it idle, get back to some form of normality before you thrust it back into gear. So I
Yeah.
think that's a good way. That's a good way to look at it. It's probably how I've coped with it without having that terminology until only the other week.
Yeah, right. I love the concept of that. I like that it shows some emotional intelligence that I have to be able to read my own emotions, know where I'm at in my state to be able to go, okay, this is a moment to put it in neutral for a little while. And
But
I like
I
even
think,
that that's a saying that you can say to yourself.
yeah, at the end of the day, if you do, someone taught me quite a number of years ago, it's how you recover, it's what you do next, so there will be times when you let things get away with you, get ahead of you, stress too much, may not have the best, performance in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens, but it's what you do next. How do you recover? How do you make good on that with the people that were around you, and what you learned from it, and I think that's always very important. It's what do you do next? So many people will have a bad moment and then just shy away from it and
Yeah.
be too embarrassed to make that recovery.
Or let that shape then the future.
Yeah.
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 And on that too, I think I love the idea and concept of put it in neutral, but I also go sometimes our life is our whole life. We don't always have clear boundaries between work and living and professional and personal. How have you managed that as a leader? You know, have you been able to not let it bleed into your home life? Do you have any tips for people who are going, sometimes I take that stuff home and that's really challenging?
I've always tried to have boundary. I mean, I think it's very difficult to say, despite government regulations, to say that you do zero at home, even if you are attending a place of work X hours a week. It's at this level, it's very hard not to, for two reasons. One, you want to do a good job because that's why you're in the role. You want to look after people. I mean, my last role was a 24/7 business with about 600 people on the road at all hours of the day and night. So you, from a welfare point of view, you do take that home.
Yeah.
Because while I'm relaxing in front of the fire, there are people out there actually standing in the trench in the pouring rain on the side of the road. So you can't help but take that home as a leader if you care for your people.
Yeah.
In that case, how I used to get around that was, if I was concerned, I would actually go out,
Right.
physically go out and turn up on the side of the road in the middle of the night with the coffee shop. And that actually, to me, wasn't work, because I felt connected to those crews on the road, and I felt, okay, now I know they're safe. Now I can go home and go to sleep.
Right.
In terms of doing paperwork at home, let's just call it paperwork, whatever that is. Yes, gotta love always a good spreadsheet. I
Yeah.
always try and set aside, if I've got a project on or a deadline or something that I really want to be really, really good, and I want to review it, I always make a set time of the week that I work at home on that.
Right.
Whether that be an early Sunday morning or a Saturday afternoon before the football or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Be a set piece of time in that job.
So
And then
again,
that,
those boundaries kind of, so you
yeah,
go, I've allocated this, I'll sit
yeah.
and do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and that may vary depending upon the industry or the time zone, or you can set it forever in your life that suits your family.
Yeah.
But I tend to do it at the start of a role. I say, okay, this is where the industry sits. This is what my family, the stage of my family is at. This time slot would appear to be the most palatable, let's say, to the family.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that communicate up front.
Yeah.
And stick to what you say so that they see you follow through on those
Yeah.
sorts of things. Yeah. Getting towards the end, before I ask the last question, is there something that you wished I'd asked you and I haven't yet?
Something. Let's talk about growth mindset.
Oh, I'd
That's
love
one.
to.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So
I'd love
what does it mean to you? I mean,
well, I guess stepping away from Carol Dweck and her whole, growth versus fixed, I kind of attach a growth mindset to my value of curiosity.
right.
And that a growth mindset for me is to continually be curious about the world and not just accept everything for what it is, or go, this is how it is and how it always has to be, but always be curious about, but what about,
Right.
imagine if. So I guess a bit of a dream or a possibility thinking is, for me, is growth mindset, is to always go, oh, what if this was different? What if I was doing this in a different country? What if I was a different person? How would I approach this if I was? So putting myself in other people's shoes, imagining different things. So for me, growth is life. Like,
Yeah.
really, we're always in continual perpetual motion and growth. And fixed to me feels like boxed in and a bit scary.
Right. Yeah, I think to me, it's about being brave. There's an issue around being brave in business. And that's not a macho brave. It's just a mentally brave that says, okay, I'm curious. I want to learn something new every day. I want to take the business here. And sometimes you won't have all of that research. So you won't have the luxury of that fantastic research in that that early days role that I spoke about, and you'll have to make risk-based decisions, and that's where being brave comes in.
Mm.
I met this guy in Poland one day, and he said, you know, when you and I, there's a little bit of Polish vodka involved. When you and I are sitting in the retirement home on the veranda, don't ever say, I wish I'd been brave enough to do this. Yeah. And I think, yeah, as a leader, you do what research you can, you cobble together the best people that you can.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you've got to be brave enough to make that decision whether to proceed or not to proceed and what to do next.
Absolutely. And it's that have a bit of a risk mindset that you
Yeah.
minimize as much risk as you can, but it's always going to take courage to step into the unknown, isn't it?
Yep. And as long as you foremost look after the people
Mm-hmm.
that you're working with, then you've done everything that you can.
Absolutely. So I do have one other question before I
Yeah.
ask the last one, because it just reminded me of something that I've seen as a flavor in what I know about you, and that is your deep care for other people and your generosity around that. Can you tell me a bit about your life philosophy around that, or how you got to that place? Because I know you also said when you care, you also have to be careful with boundaries, because otherwise you can give
Yeah.
away too much. Where did that come from?
It's probably been it's part of my upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
So as I mentioned, my dad before, so he's always been a very charitable person and very giving of his time. But I think the issue there is you. He taught me to always say, okay, everyone's equal in the first instance. Everyone gets the same amount of time, and unfortunately, you'll learn the hard way that some of that time was wasted. But in the main, the time will be well spent, and over a period, you'll then be able to pick through and understand where your time will be best spent to help people. So as not to, I'll just cut to the chase. People will often lean on you unduly, and it's about being able to quickly size up that and sidestep that so that that period of giving of time and energy for the team, is being correctly directed.
Mm.
And being able to again be brave enough to make that decision, to politely focus your time on where those people will benefit the most, not where you will benefit the most, but those that really need the help and those that will actually grow the best out of it.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
love
just
that.
a process of sizing the situation up.
So it's that kind of give everyone equal, assume the best of everything, but then
Yeah.
be discerning as you watch intentions and people's follow through, and
And
then
quite
start to put
swift
it where it
swift
needs.
as well, quite
Right.
swiftly.
Yeah.
And and you may make a mistake, but as I said before, mistakes are okay. It's how you recover from that. You may well go back around again and change your prioritization of the time that you're giving.
I know for me, in full honesty, that's probably still a learning for me, in that I always want to assume the best of everyone.
Yeah.
And I am not swift enough at narrowing when I need to. So I'm renowned at continually giving, even when that's probably no longer really due. And so I'm slower to that. So
I mean,
I could learn a bit from you.
that's a good thing. That's a good thing, but then you've got to look after your own time. You've got to
Yes.
look after yourself.
And to be really clear, I know sometimes I've felt that sense of resentment start to build when someone's overusing something.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's on me because I didn't clarify or set a boundary or
Mm.
say enough. I also let it go. And so of course they're going to keep
Keep
drawing it
tackling
out.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then anxiety builds with you and that person, and unfortunately can end up in an unhealthy situation.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
and we've all had that, and it's a
Yes.
matter of, yeah. And when you make that decision where to focus your time, it's how you communicate it. Invariably, though, the person who gets less time will not be happy with you. And that's just something that you've just got to accept and move on.
Yeah. And I think my number one saying around that is always that clear is kind. So at least not being a mystery, but going, here's why I'm doing this way, and this is what it's going to be. Even when some people don't like it, I just go, clear is kind. It's better for them to.
It's tough though, isn't it? It's tough.
It is very hard.
Because normally the other end ain't listening.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
yeah, no, it's tough. It's never great.
Yeah.
But you have to, because if you don't look after yourself, then how are you going to look after, hypothetically, the 10 people that you want to give time to?
Support. Absolutely. And that again is that bravery and courage, right? Is that stepping into that space.
Yeah.
So I love that we've gone a lot around the people stuff and all of the different aspects of leadership without actually really telling people all of the different things you've done in your career. But I would say go and check Roger out on LinkedIn. You'll get a bit of a feel for that. And he is on there. So if you want to connect with him, check him out, Roger Crellin on LinkedIn. Final question for you, Roger. And maybe this again is something from the influence of your father. But I'd love to know, what do you want to be remembered for? And it comes from my grandfather, because I can remember my grandfather saying, you never die until the last person who remembers you dies. And so I'm curious.
Oh, tough one. This reminds me of that afternoon in Poland when we saw it.
Yes.
What do I want to be remembered by? I would say, yes, someone who goes out of their way to help.
Wow.
And sometimes makes a profit. Sometimes in bold.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, as someone who I've met and know that you do go out of your way, and you've come out here to the valley where I live and given generously of your time.
I'm so jealous. I love it there. I'm thinking about renting your front paddock.
Oh, there you go. I've had a few people reach out.
Yeah.
I really am very grateful for your generosity of time again today. Really love what you're doing in the world, and I only wish that there were more people who took some leaves out of your book. And I hope that listening to this has inspired some people and reminded them that we have to also take care of ourselves and do things in a healthy way. So thank you so much, Roger.
Yeah, thanks, AJ. Having read the 10-degree shift program, I like, certainly those 10 points. If anyone listening has not at least read the program, let alone, you should enact in it, certainly look at it, especially around clear purpose and straight talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are big topics. And, a lot of the research from that comes from the blue zones, which are the areas in the world where they have the most highest number of happy centenarians. So if you find a lot of 100-year-olds that have secrets to life, there's some kernels of wisdom in that. And I think we don't have to just think about it in our life. We can bring that into our workplace. And when we're dealing with dear humans, if your wish is for everyone to be thriving, then what a great world it will be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. It's great that we no longer have this brick wall between personal happiness and workplace productivity. It's great. It's great to see the integration coming along.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing your purpose today. It's greatly appreciated.
Thanks, AJ. See ya.
Cheers, mate. Bye.